As long as there have been video games, especially tricky video games, there have been players who hit a point where they simply can't take the difficulty of setting counter, puzzle, or what have you, and decide to chuck a tantrum and quit. Now, I personally have no particular problem with rage quitters as long as we're talking about single-player games where other players' experience isn't being affected. I mean, my Twitch username is Tempertress, based entirely on my tendency to lose my temper at video games, especially things that don't really matter, so I can't really judge others for doing the same, but lots of players don't feel that way. Punishments for said rage quitting are especially sensible, as I said, in multiplayer games, where one or more players dropping out actually impacts the rest of your team's ability to enjoy and properly play the game at hand. So it should come as no surprise that every inventive and slightly cruel punishment for rage quitting on this list comes from a multiplayer game. If they don't get consequences, they won't learn, I guess. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 9 ways video games punish rage quitters. Number 9. Quitalities. Mortal Kombat 1. Mortal Kombat has a long legacy of having many creative and interesting ways to skewer, disembowel, and otherwise maim your opponents, so why should rage quitting be any different? Most people know about the franchise favorite fatalities, animalities, and babalities, but Mortal Kombat X introduced a series first in quitalities. They've persisted in every installment since, and 2023's Mortal Kombat 1 looks to be no different. The game is set to feature some brutal and humiliating consequences for players who've decided they've taken enough punishment and no bad of a match. While Mortal Kombat X would explode your character's head and Mortal Kombat 11 mostly impaled your abandoned character with a spike, things seem to be spiced up a touch in the sequel. While as of writing this list, the game's stress test was our only experience of quitalities so far, they look to be pretty darn impressive. We've so far seen clips including Sub-Zero exploding into a bundle of bones and blood, and Kenshi breaking his own neck. The players might not be around to properly soak in the shame of these quitality punishments, but it's definitely a bit of fun for the dominating player. Number 8. A bit sus. Splatoon 2. While it's unlikely the kids are playing Mortal Kombat, they're absolutely playing Splatoon 2, and lucky or unluckily for rage quitters, it turns out that rage quitting punishments know no age group. While everything might appear bright and cutesy enough to not elicit gamer rage, anyone who's played Splatoon knows that's not the case. Should you quit out of a match in a suspicious way, you'll have an entertaining warning pop up that essentially gentle parents you into not doing that again. It reads, "Your previous online play session didn't end naturally," which is pretty suspicious. If this keeps happening, we're gonna have to block you from playing online for a while. Make sure your internet isn't busted and try again. I guess that's your warning to sit on the naughty step for a bit and think about what you've done. Number 7. The deserter penalty. Smite. Smite is one of those multiplayer games that is massively affected by players dropping out before the end of the game, so it stands to reason there would be a pretty brutal punishment for rage quitting players, and there is. The deserter penalty is a punishment that's doled out to any player who leaves a match in progress or abandons the lobby. If the game you rage quit is still in session, you'll be loaded up back in that same game until the match is over. Once it's ended, you'll be given a time ban, and the duration depends on whether the match is ranked and how many times you've deserted in a given period. These range from a minimum of a 3-minute ban on joining match queues for those that drop out of a casual match, and a 20-minute ban for those who abandon a ranked match. That goes all the way up to a 1-hour ban or a 24-hour ban if you abandon a casual match 4 times in 1 day or a ranked match 4 times in 5 days. It might seem a bit harsh, but given that these matches really rely on all players giving it their all from start to finish, it's pretty fair. Number 6. Low priority. Dota 2. Another serious competitive multiplayer game with equally serious punishments for those who are fed up with their impending loss is Dota 2. In short, players who abandon a match will receive a loss whether their team ultimately wins or loses, but the extended version of what serial grouchy players who don't want to play anymore have to face is much worse. Once you've concluded your keyboard and mouse smashing, you might find that when you've logged back into the game, you've been classified in low search priority. If this is your first Dota 2 rodeo, let me explain why that's a bad thing. Those with low priority will be restricted to only playing with other low priority players, and you'll find it takes quite a bit longer to find a match at all. You'll also need to work your way back into the game's good graces by playing multiple games this way before you can work your way out of low priority and back into regular queuing. Not only that, you'll find you're also restricted to playing what fans say is the worst mode in the game, single draft, wherein you can only choose from a severely limited pool of randomized heroes. But wait, it gets worse. You actually have to win multiple games in this mode with that limited pool of heroes for it to count towards moving yourself out of low priority. Brutal. Number 5, bad sports, Grand Theft Auto Online. If you thought the general ratbaggery and unhinged behavior of Grand Theft Auto Online or any other multiplayer lobby was bad, let me tell you about the hellscape that is GTA's bad sport lobbies. First off, there are a few ways you can end up in what amounts to crazy person video game jail. And these include destroying other players' personal vehicles, rage quitting out of jobs mid-mission, being reported for griefing, and being voted out of jobs. Those labeled bad sports will be thrown into an isolated server that is only shared by other bad sports. And again, the only way we can describe this is like a loony bin run out of the Old West. Your initial sentence to the world's most unsettling lobby is only a couple of days, but if you keep being branded a bad sport, that timer will increase. Unless you're keen for a server filled with Joker makeup, players looking to destroy everything and everyone in sight, and a truckload of dunce hats, better be on your best behavior. Number 4, Barbecue Q, Team Fortress 2. If Team Fortress 2 isn't a game you thought about in a long time, as it isn't for me, this excellent achievement for rage quitters should remind you why the 2007 game is still going strong. While Team Fortress 2 has featured traditional punishments for leaving matches midway, like placing you in low priority pools, ban times, and losing rank points, depending on what mode you're playing, the punishment we're featuring is just delightful. In the same vein as Mortal Kombat's quitalities, this is a punishment that gives the player on the receiving end a bonus instead of just torpedoing the rage quitter. In this instance, that comes in the form of an achievement called Barbecue Q. This achievement can be obtained by first playing as the pyro and then killing a player 5 times without letting them kill you, causing them to leave the server. Good for you, bad for them. Wonderful. Number 3, timeout bans, World of Warcraft. Another game that has more than stood the test of time and as a result has had to work out how best to deal with rage quitters is World of Warcraft. Though much of the game can be played solo without the need to put the ban hammer down on players who are having a rough time of it, this isn't true of everything the MMORPG has to offer. Those who quit PvP matches or PvE content, such as dropping out of a dungeon before fighting the final boss, will face timeout bans that last up to 30 minutes. While this doesn't stop them from questing, it does prevent that bad egg player from jumping back in with the same group trying to beat the dungeon, so their impact on spoiling other players' enjoyment is limited. It might not be the most inventive punishment on this list, but hey, if it works, it works. Number 2, quitter shaming, Gears of War 4. In its heyday, Gears of War 4 had a massive issue with players rage quitting left, right, and center when things weren't going their way. In order to combat this and ensure the integrity and quality of multiplayer matches could be maintained for the rest of the non-ragey players, the Coalition implemented a bunch of different anti-quitting measures. One of these was quitter shaming in ranked matches, wherein any player who left a match before its conclusion would have the word quit as their score. Alongside that addition, frequent offenders would find themselves with a matchmaking ban that increases over time. And again, that suspension time is advertised on the scoreboard for all to see. Naturally, this name and shame method accidentally worked as a badge of honor for some kinds of players, but by and large, it mostly worked out. It's worth mentioning that those who dropped out due to internet connectivity issues were protected by a 5-minute window, which allowed them to rejoin the match without penalty, assuming they were able to. Number 1, the Salt Mines, Friday the 13th, the game. 2017 survival horror Friday the 13th had a hell of a time trying to deal with rage quitters and griefers who would find themselves in a poor situation and quit out of the match to keep Jason from collecting his murdery XP. And so to combat those sore losers, rage quitters, and salty someones, the developers introduced a new idea, the Salt Mines. Said Salt Mines assigned each player a salt score that would increase if they participated in any kind of salty, player-unfriendly behavior, like leaving a match early, while being killed, abandoning a match while playing as Jason, or while hosting a game. Let your salt score get too high and you'd be sent to a designated lobby, filled with, as the developers put it, equally sodium-soaked peers. Not unlike GTA Online's Bad Sports Lobby or many other games that utilize a similar system, this just lumps all the naughty players together so they can drum up trouble on their own and leave everybody else in peace. Not a bad plan, really. That is the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section which rage quitter punishments are your favorite. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.